Okay, so heads I propose to her, tails I don't. Order the buckler and shield and prepare for battle.
Well, good morning. I'm glad you're here on this beautiful fall day. If I haven't had a chance to meet you, my name's Chris. I'm part of the team here at Journey. We're in the third part of a series called Divine Direction, and it has a lot to do with making wise decisions. As a matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago, Jeremy started us off and he gave us one word as kind of the summary of all of the other words, and it had to do with making decisions, and the one word was start. That sometimes we can think about it, we can pray about it, we can analyze it, but there's got to come a point where we just start. Now, some of you are great starters, like, hey, there's an idea, I'll do that, and you're already gone. But for some people, that is the hardest part, and it's been fun to listen to some of you who responded. That was just the words you needed to kind of give you a little zzz and get you moving. And so that's awesome. The second word last week was completely different than that, as he talked us through some wise counsel on how to make decisions, and he landed with the word stop. That sometimes we literally have to stop some things in order to move forward. That sounds almost opposite of what would be true, but sometimes you have to stop to even start the right things. So today I'm going to land on a third word, and I want to tell you a couple of things about making decisions that we have not wanted to do in this series. Our goal isn't to do like 3 easy steps to make a great decision. Can I just tell you this? There aren't 3 easy steps to make a great decision. Decisions are complex, they're difficult, they're weighty, and for some of you, you've been faced, even in your recent days, with some very difficult decisions. I hear about them. I've heard people in our community over the last 2 or 3 weeks who've talked about, I heard someone the other day talking about their parents are on the very back end of life and physically very challenged, and they're having to make difficult, weighty, emotional decisions about how to care for their parents better. And to make it worse, their parents aren't making it easier. And it's hard to know what to do with that. Nobody gave us a book saying, here's the easy answer to that. Here's what I don't want to do is I don't want to pretend like I've got some easy answer to, oh yeah, just do that. 3 easy steps. You click your heels together and spin around and start there. Because it's not that way. It's very difficult. There's a lot riding on it. I've heard people who've talked about whether or not they ought to pursue or continue to pursue a relationship that they're in. And it's a big deal. I mean, that will determine so much of your future. And then I've heard the same conversation extended a few years, people saying, I'm not sure if I ought to stay in a relationship I'm in. And of course, that comes with all kinds of pain and difficulty and frustration and uncertainty. And so what we don't want to do is say, this is an easy thing. All you do is anything. And what we don't want to do is be self-help. Here's just the steps. What we've entitled this series is called Divine Direction, and what we're trying to say is that I bet God could play a part in that decision-making that could be life-changing. Sometimes I think my tendency is to exhaust all my resources, and when all else fails, consult God. I know none of you are that way, but sometimes I'm not as spiritual as all of you. But for me, sometimes it's like I try to analyze it, scrutinize it, talk to 4 people and read a book. And then I'm like, God, I don't know what to do, to which God must go, I was here all along. You could have asked. Like, before you were, I was. And I'm on this thing. But often I find that as a last step. And so I guess a piece of it is to say we're looking for divine direction. If we're going to do it, we're just trying to give you some ideas, some pieces in a puzzle that will help you make good decisions. To get us started off, I want to make one statement, and I think it's really true. I've thought about it the last couple of weeks in preparing for this, is that we don't make decisions. Our decisions typically make us. Who I am today, where I am today, what I do today is a result of a whole series of decisions. Sometimes decisions don't seem like such a big deal, but when you look back, you go, man, that decision to date her or him 20 years ago, you look and it has resulted in so much of who you are and maybe who God has added to your family if you've been blessed that way, and all of those things. You go, wow, one decision. And some of you are like, wow, one decision. But still, one decision. Either way you say the wow, it's the truth. and about your job or your career, or it's relocated you even to where you live today. It changes so many. We don't just make our decisions often really make us. One of the things that concerns me is that we live in a world today where a lot of things in our society have changed. I'll give you, for instance, there's some people in this room, and I'll say you to all of these, so it doesn't matter where I fall, but generationally, there are some people who grew up in a world when it came to making decisions about your future, especially your financial future, you were taught, or we were taught, however you want to look at that, you were taught, find a job, stick with it, and then someday retire. Because that will bring, here's the word, security. That'll be your security. If it's a sucky job, get over it. Deal with it. But hang on to it, there may not be another one. Now, for a lot of people, that may have come from parents who maybe went through 20s and 30s and 40s in a post-recession, in a post-depression world where there was a lot of scarcity. There wasn't a lot of stuff, and there wasn't always great job. And there's this feeling of you better hang on to what you got, you may never have another one. And so there's a whole generation of people who went to work and they put their head down and they did what they had to do. Did you like it? No, it's a job. That would be the answer. Do you like your job? No, that's why they call it a job. If I liked it, it would be called fun. And see, for some of you, you're like, that just makes no sense. Why does it have to be either or? And I'm just telling you, there's a whole generation that grew up in a world that just said, get what you can and hang on to it, ride it out, so that in the end you'll have enough to survive. There's a generation after that, and maybe this is overly segmented, but there's a generation after it, and the thought was this: get an education. You need to get an education because that education will give you a better entry point, and that entry point will let you climb up this ladder. You know what all of that is for? So that someday you'll be okay. So get an education. Jump in where as high up the ladder as you can and keep climbing, because for you, that's going to find fulfillment and success. And there's a generation behind that, and for some of you, this will drive you crazy, and others of you will go, that makes sense. It's about time you say something that makes sense. You've been told this when you were growing up: find what you love. Find what you're passionate about. Find what makes your soul be stirred or makes your heart be full, and do that. Find a way to do that for a living. And for some of you, you're like, that's exactly. Why would it ever have been any other way? And others of you are like, yeah, go find a living doing that. Pay a bill. You know which one of those three theories is right? Find it, stick with it, suck it up, and get over it till you die. Get an education, climb the ladder. That's where you'll find fulfillment and success. Just follow your dreams. You know which one of those is right? None of them. You know which one of those is wrong? None of them. They've all got pieces that would be well served. They've all got some things. It makes sense where they came from when you look at when they landed in our society. But let me just say this. If you're banking on any one of those being your source of reality, you're going to miss out on some very good things, and you're going to land in some places you don't want to land because they're all faulty thinking. Doesn't mean all of the thinking is faulty. And with the extreme on any of those, it is really perilous territory. So I want to talk to you about making decisions in a society today where we've landed in a very different world, where there's not a lot of patience. As a matter of fact, some of you grew up in a world where when you wanted to heat something, you had an oven, just a big oven. You turned it on, stuck something in there, like an hour later, it was hot. Remember those? And now we have, if you just want to make something hot, you put it in a microwave. And the world has changed a lot. Like if I put something in my microwave and push 1 minute, there's no way I can stand there and just wait a minute. I'll never get that minute. I'll go do 2 other things and come back. And if there's still time ticking down on the clock, I'll turn channels 2 more times because I have to be multitasking. And a minute, for the love of all things good. A whole minute. We live in a world where we love to start things and get things fast. And with that also comes a reality that we often toss things out very quickly. We quickly assess, is this worth keeping or not? Nope, move on. We live in a world where out can happen just as quickly as in. There's not a lot of patience on either end. I'd like to talk to you about a third word today. We started with stop, which makes perfect sense to start with stop. And then we went to stop, secondly, because after you start, you may have to stop some things. Today I'd like to give you a third word, and the word is stay. And out of all the words we're going to look at, each of the four words, this may be the most difficult for some of us. And some of us in this room today will be super valuable. And for some of you, and here's my little concern, stay may not be your focus that you need. For some of you, start wasn't the thing that you went, oh, that is exact. I just needed a kick in the butt. For some, stop is just what you needed because you've got all these things coming in and you just needed to hear something that said, maybe I just need to stop that piece. And I just want to tell you, stay is not the right piece of the puzzle for everybody, but it is a piece we don't talk about much in our world today. So I thought we'd give it a quick run. I built it on a piece of the Bible back in the Old Testament. And it's this beautiful piece of history that is written about some amazing people. And I want to kind of summarize it. The whole story is a little bit like a Lifetime movie. So some of you are like, yeah. And some of you are like, oh my. Lifetime movie. So I want to do it like in a 5-minute commercial version. And some of you are like, 5 minutes of Lifetime movie commercials, that's like a little slice of Hades, you know? But we'll try to make it as pain-free as we can. And if you love Lifetime, then this is your chance. The little historic account is about a woman whose name was Naomi. And Naomi had this amazing life, and it started out, and I think it had a lot of her dreams coming true in a lot of ways. Naomi grew up, and she met Mr. Right, which is a weird name, but especially in those days. But she found, and she was married and had a husband, and together they had a couple of sons, and it felt like life was moving forward, and it was a good thing. And she was enjoying that. And then if we could just take and summarize without all of the commercial interruptions, her life, she, like the clouds on the screen earlier when we were singing that song about rain, she went through some long period of cloudy days. Now, some of us don't relate to that because you may have been on a roll lately. Like you're making more than you've ever made, and life is working out for you. But for some people in a room with this many people in it, without any doubt, you've been going through some cloudy days, and you wonder, is there a sun behind any of it? And if that's for you, you'll relate to Naomi, that her husband died. That's horrible in 1,000 ways, but it's equally horrible in her day because there wasn't exactly hey, I'll just go get a job, because most women didn't have jobs. She lost her support mechanism, but what she did have is she had 2 sons, and each of them had married, and together they kind of cared for her and provided her stability and the things she needed. And that was going better, except in her cloudy story, there was a next chapter, and both of her sons passed away. And so now it's not just her, it's her and her 2 daughters-in-law. And as the 3 of them were there, she did what a lot of moms would do. What many of you would say. She reached a point when she said, you guys are young, you've got a future. I'm going to be an anchor to you. You guys go back to our homeland. Go back to where we're from. Go find somebody else. You've got your whole life ahead of you. Be free and fly. Just go. I'll be okay. Well, her daughters-in-law said, no, we're not going to do that. What kind of people do you think we are? We love you, and we're sticking with you, and we're all together, just the 3 of us. And she said, no, seriously, we're going to have a hard time making it. We're going to have a hard time surviving. Now go. They did this back and forth until the next commercial, and you were glad the commercial came, because how many times can you go, no, go, no, we're staying. No, seriously, go. We are not go. So they did a lot of that. And so finally, one of the daughters-in-law named Orpah, she finally reached a point. She said, okay, Naomi, I'm gone, but I love you. Big hugs. Off she went back to her homeland. And then there's 2 of them left, Naomi and Ruth. And Ruth makes this beautiful statement. Matter of fact, over 30 years ago, I stood up on a big platform in a church that had really ugly carpet and pews. I remember that. It's been a long time, but I remember that. And we used a little slice of what she said in our wedding. I thought I'd read these words for you. They're in the Bible if you want to find them in the book of Ruth, chapter 1. We'll put them up on the screen. It says, but Ruth replied, talking to her mother-in-law, Don't ask me to leave you and turn back. That's when you're frustrated, when you finally look and say, you need to stop saying that. Don't ask me to leave you and turn back. Wherever you go, I will go. And wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there I'll be buried. May the Lord punish me severely if I allow anything but death to separate us. She makes this line in the sand, momentous statement, and she just says, I'm in. Good or bad, I'm with you. Whatever happens. If you're there, I'm there. If it's your people, it's my people. If it's your God, it's my God. And I just want to say this, and then we'll zip on past this. I think everybody on planet Earth longs for one other human being to not just say that, but say that and live that out. Just somebody to say, I know you, I've seen your best, and I've seen your worst, but I want you to know this, I'm in it with you. For good or bad, up or down, crazy or sane, I am with you. For everybody who's thought they had that and found out they didn't, there's an immense hurt. She makes this amazing, beautiful, eloquent, powerful, courageous statement to Naomi. And off they go. If you read their whole story, there's these beautiful and tragic and enlightening things that happen in their life. But I want to tell you, in their world, this thing of making a commitment, her commitment wasn't to start. And it wasn't to stop. Her commitment was to stay. That was her word that she would have used. The problem with us in a society where stay is not a real relevant word, it is not an often used word, because we tend to be very microwavable on the front end and disposable on the back end. Stay is kind of a countercultural word. One of the reasons is that there's a lie that we often believe, and by we I mean me, but hopefully it'll apply to you, that often in my life when I'm faced with something that is really difficult, really maybe to me feels wrong, or a decision that seems insanely uncomfortable, I believe this lie. I call it the either or lie. Now, over the last bunch of years of my life, I've sat with lots of couples who are going through marital struggle, and I often start off by hearing this. It is a spouse, one or the other, or both, that say, it feels to me like there's two options. One option is to live the way we've been living, and that's unlivable, it's unmanageable, and I can't survive it. I'm living in the third ring of hell, and I can't do that anymore. I've tried, and I can't. That's option one. Option two is to leave. I've got two options. Well, I found in my life, quite a few times in my life, I have reached a point where I believe there were only two options. And typically for us, when we believe there's only two options, I just want to tell you, we're mistaken. I believe there's a little voice that goes on in all of our heads, and some of you are having it. Some of you who are going through really difficult times have it, and you're having a discussion with me right now. And you're probably thinking what I ought to say or what I haven't said or I better not say right now. And I get it, because I sit there, Jeremy speaks, and I'm having that conversation all the time. He doesn't ever hear it, but it's probably best that way, because who knows what I might be thinking, because I got all kinds of crazy going on in my head. But we do this all the time. In my mind, I often have this little line that's drawn that says, well, I can't, so I have to. And what we take out of the middle is maybe a third possibility. Often when I talk with couples, I'll say, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what your future holds. I don't know everything that's best for you. But can I say this? If you feel like the only options are live in hell or leave, if there were a third option, I'm not saying there is, but if there were a third option, would you at least be open to it? You know what most people say? I don't believe there's a third option. And I just want to say this, most of the time, with God, there's a third option. He is a gifted option giver and option taker. If you look, he has created a lot of breadth. He is very seldom either just or that. I mean, go to the zoo and look at the breadth of God's creation. He doesn't get stuck in either or very often. Go to Walmart. You can see the same thing. That's like the zoo for people. It's just that way, that God has more. He is up to more. He knows more. He is capable of more. But the problem is I often get stuck with these voices in my head that just say it's either that or that. And I'm not saying those are always wrong. I'm just saying there's usually at least something else out there. Have you given room for that in your life? Whatever your big decision is, whatever your difficulty, whatever your cloudy time is, have you given room that maybe God has something bigger going on than meets the eye, other than live in horrible, unlivable, or leave? Sometimes the greatest act of our faith in our life will literally be our faithfulness. The greatest act of our faith will be our faithfulness to stick with. Sometimes it's not this amazing proclamation, including our friend Ruth. The greatest thing she did wasn't to make this big moment where she stood up and could you hear music in the background? Because it's a Lifetime movie, there's always music in the background. And she's like, I will not leave you. Where you go, I will go. If you die, I'm in, baby. This moment, that wasn't her greatest moment. The greatest moment was the life that lived out past it, because that wasn't her faith statement. That was her faithfulness. And it's easy to talk big when you're in a room full of people who agree. It is hard to live it out on the other end. The greatest act of our faith often is literally our faithfulness. So it leaves us to a point, if we want divine direction, and this goes kind of without saying, but I'm going to say it nonetheless, because that's what we do at church, is we like to over-explain the obvious. It's a gift we have, and we've been doing it for thousands of years, and I'm not stopping it today. The bottom line becomes this: I just need to make sure that I seek God first. Before I ask my buddies who've been through a really bad time at this job, or who've been through my wife is crazy, they're all crazy, you need to get out of that because they all crazy. You need to run while you can. Whether that's about your job or about your wife or about your in-laws or about whatever decision you're making, there's plenty of people that will tell you there's a lot of voices in your head, or maybe it's not that. Maybe it is your girlfriends that you hang out with and you guys go after work and you talk and they're like, you can't trust any of them. They're all cheaters. They're all liars. It's your job. And they're saying, you can't. They'll use you and discard you. And there may be truth to some of that, but you can't just listen to those voices. That maybe it would be really appropriate to shut some of that out and to seek God first. Say, God, what do you have? What's going on in my life that only you are aware of? And how God will explain that to you, I don't know. Well, that sounds great, Chris. I'll consult with God, and then he will... I don't know. I don't have an answer to that part. Aren't you glad you came? Bring your friends next week, and I'll tell them, I don't know again. I can give you some really flippant answer. I can give you 3 cliches, and that'll fix your life. Bumper sticker phrases. But the truth is, I don't know how God will communicate that to you. I can tell you about my story. I can tell you how God has done that, and not all that heroic. That for me, often my biggest struggle is to shut up and be still long enough. And often what God does is he just gives me some level of peace inside of me. I don't even know how to put words to that. It just sounds ridiculous. It's like trying to grab the air. You know, you can talk about air, you can breathe air, but man, it's hard to get your arms around it. And this is one of those things. But I know this, if you've ever experienced when you've kind of consulted with God on something and you've kind of shut out all the crazy around you, and you felt, sometimes he says there's a peace that literally passes our understanding. That's why I have such a hard time explaining it, because it is past my understanding. See, it's biblical. My stupidity is biblical. It's not just average stupidity. But literally, some of you go, man, I don't know what to do with that. I know, but when you experience it, you'll go, oh, I wish I had an easier answer, but maybe I don't. Maybe we keep trying to find easy answers for things that aren't easy, and that's why we're so frustrated. But I will just tell you this, that when you go to God and say, I see 2 options, do you see a third? What are you up to that's bigger than me and bigger than this situation? Sometimes you'll find out that he has something to say. So make sure you seek God first. The truth is, you'll never know what God might do if you have the courage to stay. One of my regrets in life is there's been a couple of times in my life that I have believed in either or. I I either live in something that I feel like is unlivable or I leave. And I look back now and go, I don't think I made horrible decisions, and God has been super gracious and I got a good life out of it and so many positive things. But here's what I don't know. I just don't know what God could have done. I just wonder sometimes, was God wanting to do something miraculous that would have been formative for me and would have been visible for everyone else, that God had done something godlike? And I don't know because I didn't have the courage to just stay. For some of you who are in tough situations, you're just really ticked and you wish I would get through right now, so I will. And I understand, hey, I don't believe stay is the right thing for everybody in this room either. Well, wouldn't that be stupid for me to think I've got all the answers? Hey, I found the word, this one word. But I know for some people, it is a piece in the puzzle, and if stay is not a part of your puzzle, then your puzzle's missing some pieces and it will never come together. I'm just trying to say what I feel like God's put on my heart and what all of us need to have as a piece of our arsenal. That stay is part of it. The story in Ruth finishes, there's all kinds of finish to it, and I don't have time for all of it. If you'd like to find out, there's this thing called the Bible, and you could just read it. You can just go to like your Bible and open it to Ruth chapter 2, and it tells you the rest, and it's amazing and beautiful. But there's one little piece I read a couple of weeks ago, and it has really stuck with me. And this is what it said from somebody that Ruth was going to, a person that would help her future play out. These are insanely beautiful words. He said this, I have heard how you left your father and mother and your own land to live here among complete strangers. Somehow this little peasant servant girl, word of her faithfulness had made it all the way to the executive branch and beyond. And he said, I have heard about you, not about you, but about what you've done, about your commitment, about your faithfulness. May the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge, reward you fully for what you've done. May the Lord, your God, reward your faithfulness. All because one little girl who had every right to leave chose to do what she felt like God had put on her heart for that time and that place. And word about her had stretched beyond. And if you read the end of her story, you just go, only God could do that. Because that's just kind of what God does. One little note, and then I'll wrap things up and get us out of here for lunch. And this one is probably just from experience, and not even experience of being smart enough to know what I'm doing, but looking back going, oh. An experience of walking with a lot of other people. We often make the most important decisions in our life when we are the least healthy. Normally huge decisions, often relational decisions, often transformative decisions are made at the end of a very long journey when we feel beat up and depleted, empty, under-resourced, emotionally drained. It's just the way it works. If you've got a friend going through really dark times, I bet you would say, man, I'm scared about them making a decision right now because they're having a hard time surviving. Is that the best time to make the biggest decisions of your life? But that's when decisions usually seem to have to be made. The problem is our default when we're in that depleted state is almost always escape. Just escape. People often jump out of frying pans and into fire. And you look and say, why would they do that? And the reason is because they believe there's only two options. Live in an unlivable situation or stay or leave. And the natural response is always jump. And I just want to say, if you're in a situation and you need to make a decision, here's kind of our practical application. Put all of your time, energy, and focus, not in just deciding what to do, but in deciding on how you can become the healthiest version of you. Because a healthy you will make a great decision. And an unhealthy you has a 0% chance at lucking into the right decision. You know that for people around you. You go, listen, they are so unhealthy. They are masking and covering in 1,000 ways, and they're hoping for a great outcome. It's not going to happen. Here's the great thing. A healthy you will make a healthy decision, will lead to a healthy life. It's just the truth. Galatians 6 says, so let's not allow ourselves to get fatigued doing good. At the right time, we will harvest a good crop if we don't give up or quit. I just want to give you one option in life, and one of the options that needs to be added to your arsenal is the word stay. Can I just say one more thing about this? Like you can, no, well, I'm gonna, because I got a microphone. One of the things that concerns me in life is we live in a place where we stay till something gets complicated. We stay till something gets difficult. We stay till something gets weird. And as a church, it's one of our problems. We live in a world where when it comes to a faith community, that often people treat it like they do Amazon. We kind of hoppers and shoppers. I'll just Google somebody else's church. I didn't like what that guy said. I'll Google it. I'll find me another one. And this may not be the right place for you. And if it's not, of all the churches in the world, we would say we want you to find a place where God can grow you and you can make an impact on his kingdom. But I'll just say this. Our goal at Journey is not to be one of many others. It's to be the one that God created us to be. And in doing that, we believe God's going to send and has been sending and has created an environment where a group of people lock arms together and say, we believe together we can make a difference for his kingdom's sake. We believe we can make a difference that down the road we already have seen. We've already seen the benefits of that for many of you in your lives. You've seen the benefit of that. But I believe to the point that I moved my family here. And this is my home. I believe so much that God has begun something. And over the next 5 or 10 or 15 years, we're going to look back on and say, only God could have done that. And we're looking for a group of people who will say, there's going to be times when I'll have to thicken my skin a little bit because there's somebody going to act somebody a little bit weird. And I'm like, what up with that? And they're going to be like, what up with you? And I'm going to, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to work my way through it because that's what grown-ups do. There's going to be something that somebody said and I don't like, and I'm going to go sit down and talk with them and say, I don't think I like that. They're going to explain, and we're going to work through it because it's what mature people do. It's what followers of Jesus are commanded to do. And the result of that will be a community that's around that says, I have seen your faithfulness, and because of that, may the God, your God, whose wings you are under, reward you fully for what you've done. And I think God waits for a group of people somewhere in the world that will just say, together we're going to work through the odd, and we're going to work through the weird, and we're going to work through the different, and we're going to toughen our skin just a little bit because together God could do something God-sized. And if I could be a part of that, my life has a different level of meaning and a different level of hope and a different level of success. And I think that's all that God waits on. And I just want you to know that I'm committed to be one of those. That I will put up with your weird if you'll put up with mine. That I will love you with whatever baggage you bring. Because God's called us to do that. But we have to do it for each other. And don't underestimate the power of a God with a group of people who are committed to follow him more than just to find the easy way out. Because he's up to more than you might ever dream. So God, help us with that. I don't have time in my life to tread water. I don't have time in the decisions I'm making to just try to survive to the end so I can say I finished. That I want to be a part of something in this world that matters, that makes a difference, that impacts our community. In a hurting world, I want to be a part of hope. And for people who are in this room that are in the darkest, cloudiest time of their life and they're making huge decisions, I pray that you would give them a little sliver of hope. And whether it is to start or to stop or to stay, I pray that you just help them be secure in that. And for those who choose to just link arms together, I pray that the God, our God, the God, would reward so richly because only you can. And because we ask these things in your name.